Hello students, welcome to the third video on the lesson Verger taken from the alternative English textbook Verger from class 12 ACCC. Already we made two videos on the Verger, the introduction video and the first part of the story. The story is very simple. It's about a verger who was dismissed from the post of the verger owing to his illiteracy, because he was illiterate, and however due to his worldly wisdom and experience he became a successful businessman and established himself as a tobacconist and newspaper agent and made lots of money hand over fist. So the story is all about that. In the last part of the story, we come to know how Albert Edward Foreman, the verger, he was asked by the vicar to follow him into the vestry as they had some important matter to discuss with him. And the verger, while going into the vestry with the vicar, he complimented the vicar on his talent of pacifying or stopping whimpering infant from crying. Okay, so that's why I have decided to make this video, start this video with this image. This image you can see here. There is a head priest or a vicar. Okay, so this head priest or a vicar, there is a christening ceremony going on in the church, and this vicar is holding the baby in his arms. And while holding the baby, you can see the baby is very quiet. The baby is not crying. So this person has the talent of handling your whimpering or crying infants, and you can see the expression on the faces of the parents. The parents are quite amused, quite happy to see that the child is not at all crying while he is going to be Christian, while he is going to be given a Christian name. He is not at all crying. The baby is not at all crying, and the vicar is holding the baby in a very efficient manner. Okay, so the new vicar also had that talent. So let us start the next part of the story. I will then again come to this image. I have noticed they very often do, said the vicar with a little smile. After all, I have had a good deal of practice with them. It was a source of subdued pride to him that he could nearly always quiet a whimpering infant by the manner in which he held it, and he was not unconscious of the amused admiration with which mothers and nurses watched him settle the baby in the crook of his surprised arm. The verger knew that it pleased him to be complimented on his talent. The vicar preceded Albert Edward Foreman into the vestry. Albert Edward was a trifle surprised to find the two church wardens there. He had not seen them come in. They gave him pleasant nods. "Good afternoon, my lord." "Good afternoon, sir," he said to one after the other. So, you can see that Albert Edward Foreman, he complimented the vicar on his talent of handling whimpering infants or pacifying whimpering infants. He could stop them from crying. So just like this person, okay, so this person, he was holding the baby in his arms, and the parents were quite happy that the priest could handle the baby so well. So similarly, the new vicar had the talent of stopping whimpering infant from crying, and he was very much pleased when the verger complimented him on that talent, because he told that he had acquired that talent after years of practice with children. So he had a long years of practice, but he was only in his early 40s. So it's already told that in comparison to the previous vicar, he was just in his 40s. Okay, but the new vicar told that he had good deal of practice with whimpering infants. That's why he could handle them so nicely. And it was a source of subdued pride to him that he could nearly always quiet a whimpering infant by the manner in which he held it, and he was not unconscious of the amused admiration with which mothers and nurses watched him settle the baby in the crook of the surprised arm. So, just like this image where the parents were quite amused and happy to see their child so happy and quiet in the arms of the priest. Similarly, the mothers and nurses who would come to St. Peter's Church for christening ceremonies, they would also watch, or they would be also very very highly pleased, and they would watch with admiration. Okay, they would watch the new vicar with admiration when he would settle the crying baby in the arms, in the supplies arms. Supplies arms means, you can see here I have given the image of supplies. So this is a kind of a gown which the priest they used to wear upon their gowns actually. So it's a kind of a clothing with full sleeves or with open big sleeves. Okay, so this is the supplies. So supplies arms means here. So the baby would be taken in the crook of the crook means here. This is the crook. Okay, and this is the supplies. So this is the supplies. So supplies, here I have written the word meaning: a loose white outer ecclesiastical vestment. Ecclesiastical means related to religious duties. Vestments means dress, usually of knee length with large open sleeves. So this is a supplies. Okay, so when the vicar would be taking babies in his arms, he would be wearing the supplies, isn't it? So whenever he would take the baby in the crook or in the crook of his supplies arm, the baby would immediately stop crying. Okay, so he had gained long years of practice with them. So, and the mothers and nurses who would come with the baby, or the parents of the baby, they would be quite surprised, or they would be admiring how efficiently the vicar would be controlling their baby, or would be handling their baby with so much of patience that the baby at once stopped crying whenever the baby would be in the crook of the supplies arm of the vicar. And the Verger, he knew that the vicar was a person who always used to show off his talent or art. So he knew that if he would praise the vicar on his talent of handling whimpering infants, then he would be very very happy. So he praised the vicar on that talent. And when Albert, he went into the vestry. Okay, vestry is the room in a church where all the vestments or the gowns were kept actually. So when Albert Edward went into the vestry, he was very much surprised. He was a bit surprised to see the two church wardens there. He had not seen them come in. They gave him pleasant nods. So these two church wardens, they are actually people who look after the administrative duties of the church. So they are not related to the ecclesiastical order. Okay. So these church wardens, they look after the administration of the church. They look after the administration of the church. And when Albert saw that the two church wardens were in the vestry waiting for him, he was a bit surprised. He was a trifle surprised because he saw him very rarely in the church. They used to come very rare to the church. There is a reason behind that. Good afternoon, my lord. Good afternoon, sir, he said to one after the other. They were elderly men, both of them, and they had been church warden almost as long as Albert Edward had been verger. They were sitting now at the handsome refectory table that the old vicar had brought many years before from Italy, and vicar sat down in the vacant chair between them. Albert Edward faced them, the table between him and them, and wondered with slight uneasiness what was the matter. He remembered still the occasion on which the organist had got into trouble, and the border they had all had to hush things up. In a church like St. Peter's Neville Square, they could not afford a scandal. On the vicar's red face was a look of resolute benignity, but the others bore an expression that was slightly troubled. So, Albert Edward Foreman, when he saw the two church wardens, he was a trifle surprised because they had been working in St. Peter's church as long as Albert had been there. But he saw them very rarely in the church. And now they were sitting at the refectory table in the refectory table in the vestry, and the vicar sat between them. Okay, so Albert understood that they had some important matter to discuss with him. And Albert Edward, he was slightly uneasy. about the matter, because he remembered the occasion, the only occasion that these two church wardens had been there, and this the whole actually organization of the church, they had to take a lot of trouble in order to hush things up in case when one organist of the church, he got into trouble. So this organist, he got into some trouble actually, and the whole the church warden, the vicar, like all the members of the church, they had to take a lot of trouble in order to hush things up, in order to silence the matter. Okay, so that was the only significant occasion that Albert remembered when some eventful thing happened in the St. Peter's Church, because St. Peter's Church was a church which was favored by or frequented by the rich and aristocratic people of Neville Square for occasions, grand occasions. And in a church like St. Peter's, in such a reputable church like St. Peter's, which is situated in Neville Square, there could not be any scandal. So they could not afford a scandal in a church like St. Peter, Neville Square. So these kind of scandals or this kind of matters, unavoidable matters, they take place very very rarely, or they take place very such kind of scandals hardly used to take place in a church like St. Peter's, Neville Square. So Albert was very much surprised that although in spite of working for a similar number of years, these two church wardens used to come to the church very rarely. But on that particular day, he was a trifle surprised to see the two church wardens there. So he was a bit surprised, and he could see that on the face of the vicar there was a look of resolution, like that whatever decision he wanted to make, whatever matter he wanted to discuss, he was quite resolute to discuss that matter. But the two church wardens, others means the two church wardens. So the two wardens, so they had an expression which was slightly troubled. So it seemed as if they did not want to discuss some matter which they were actually forced to do. So that's why on the face of the vicar there was an expression of resolute benignity. But on the face of the two church warden, there was an expression which was a slightly trouble. So Albert, he assumed that probably he has been nagging them, he has been teasing them, or he has been nagging them or disturbing them to do something, or he has been forcing them to do something which they did not like. He has said the Verger to himself, he joked them into doing something, but they don't like it. That's what it is, you mark my words. So Albert assumed that the vicar, he wanted to discuss some matter which the church warden did not want to actually discuss, and that's why on the faces of the two church warden there was an expression of resolute. On the faces of the two church warden there was an expression of your uneasiness, or there was a troublesome expression. So it seemed as if the vicar was forcing them to do something which they did not like actually. But Albert's thought did not appear on Albert Edward's clear-cut and distinguished features. He stood in a respectful but not obsequious attitude. He had been in service before he was appointed to his ecclesiastical office, but only in very good houses, and his deportment was irreproachable. So let me first of all show you some images here so that the picture becomes clear to all of you. Okay, so here it's a still, or it's a image taken from a movie called Verger. So here you can see the vicar, the two church wardens, and a person called Albert Edward Foreman. So they were sitting on the refractory table, and he was standing in front of the three persons, the two church wardens and the vicar. Okay, the vicar, he was very much resolute about whatever decision he was going to make, but the two church wardens were slightly troubled. They were not sure whether they wanted to discuss that matter or not. And then what is obsequious? Now Albert was standing in a dignified manner but not obsequious. So like, let me see what is obsequious. So this is obsequious. Obsequious means when a person is behaving in a very meek meek and in a very servile manner. Okay, so just like a servant who will be all the time obedient to his master, or who is all the time servile to his master. So obsequious means that. Okay, but Albert, although he was standing in a dignified manner, he was not standing in an obsequious manner. He was not showing his servile attitude. Rather, he was looking very, very dignified. Okay, he was sure that although they had some important matter to discuss, it was not related to him. So Albert, at that point of time, he thought that the matter should not be related to him. And then he started to look at his whole career. Before being appointed in St. Petersburg, he was in domestic service, and his deportment was quite irreproachable, was quite like he was without any your blame. His character was irreproachable, his deportment was irreproachable. There was no flaw in his character. Okay, so there was no flaw in his character. So Albert was quite irreproachable in his character, his deportment, his job profile was quite clear cut. Okay, there was no flaw in his character. He was not accused of anything in his whole domestic service. So he started to rethink, like the matter should not be related to him, because he saw that he had been in service before he was appointed to his ecclesiastical office, but only in very good houses, and his deportment was irreproachable, without any flaw. Irreproachable means without any flaw. So his character was without any flaw. Starting as a page boy in the household of a merchant prince, he had risen by due degrees from the position of 4th to 5th footman. For a year, he had been single-handed butler to a widowed peeress, until the vacancy occurred at St. Peter's, butler with 2 men under him in the house of a retired ambassador. Okay, so Albert, he thought that his character was always without any flaw, and his deportment was also irreproachable. Okay, so the matter should not be, he thought that the matter could not be related to him, because before being appointed in St. Peter's, he had been in very good houses, and his character was without any flaw. There was no mark or there was no flaw in his character. His conduct was very, very good. Okay, so he started as a page boy. Now here we come to know how actually Albert, he was a person with a lot of worldly wisdom and experience, because although he was in domestic service for a short period of time, still he became very successful very quickly actually. So he started as a page boy, as a servant boy in the household of a merchant prince. So in the household of a merchant prince, he started as a page boy, and then he had risen by due degrees from the position of 4th to 1st footman. Footman is actually a kind of a butler. Okay, so it's a kind of a butler who looks after the cutlery and drinks in a rich household actually, in parties, in rich household, in the household of noblemen. These people, they look after the cutlery or they look after the food. So Albert, he was at first appointed as a page boy, and then he was appointed as a 4th footman. But due to his dedication, due to his hard work, due to his irreproachable character, he was soon promoted to the position of a 1st footman, senior footman. And then for a year, he had been single-handed butler to a widowed peeress. So there was a peer is a kind of a nobleman. So the wife of a peer is called a peeress. So Albert Edward Foreman, he was so skilled in his job, he was so good in his job, that he was a caretaker, or he was a butler, okay, to a widowed peeress, and that also he did the work single-handedly without any other domestic help. He had been discharging his duties as a single-handed butler until the vacancy occurred at St. Peter. So till he was appointed as a verger, he worked as a butler, as a head butler, with 2 other assistants under him in the house of a retired ambassador. So Albert was thinking that his deportment was irreproachable, his conduct was very, very good, he was a hard-working and dedicated person. So even though he was in domestic service, he was in very good households. And while thinking all this, Albert was tall, spare, grave, and dignified. He looked, if not like a duke at all, like an actor of the old school who specialized in duke's parts. He had tact, firmness, and self-assurance. His character was unimpeachable. The vicar began briskly. Okay, so Albert Edward Foreman, he was very sure that the discussion was not related to him, that the matter was not related to him, because these two church wardens used to come to the church very rarely. The last time when they came to the church, it was regarding a matter when an organist fell into trouble, and the whole church, they had to take a lot of trouble to hush things up, to silence the matter. Okay, so that was the last time the wardens came. But now Albert was a bit worried, because if you looked at his domestic service, or if you look at his conduct or his deportment, then it was irreproachable. So he thought that the matter could not be related to him, and that's why he was standing in a very dignified manner. And although he did not look like a duke or a nobleman, at least he looked like an actor who used to play duke parts, okay, who used to play the part or the role of a duke in a theater, or in actually in theaters, the characters who used to take the role of the duke, they also used to behave like a duke, isn't it? So that's why the author said that although he did not look like a duke, he was looking like the actor who played the role of a duke. Okay, so you can see here, and his character was unimpeachable. His character had no flaw. And here we have the picture of a duke. So who is standing, it's a image taken from one of Shakespeare's plays. So this is a character of a duke, okay, an actor playing the role of a duke. Okay, so here you can see the actor playing the role of a duke. Playing the role of a duke. So here you can see the person is standing in a very dignified manner. He looks very firm, strict, very dignified, nobleman, had handsome features. So Albert also was behaving in the same manner. Okay, so it seemed as if when he was standing in front of the vicar and the two church wardens, just like this image from the movie. So Albert was standing in a very firm and dignified manner, and he looked like a actor who played the role of a duke actually. Okay, Foreman, we have got something rather unpleasant to say to you. You have been here a great many years. I think his lordship and the general agree with me, and that you have fulfilled the duties of your office to the satisfaction of everybody concerned. The two church wardens nodded. But a most extraordinary circumstance came to my knowledge the other day, and I felt it my duty to impart it to the church warden. I discovered to my astonishment that you could neither read nor write. Okay, now already in the second or in the previous class, I told you people that the new vicar, he had that habit of making fuss over unnecessary matters, isn't it? So here we can see how, when the matter of Albert's illiteracy came to his notice, he decided that he was going to do something about it. And therefore, he called Albert into the vestry. He even invited the two church wardens. The church wardens, they were not very much willing to discuss this matter, because they were satisfied with the duties of Albert Edward Foreman as a verger. So in spite of his illiteracy, he was taking good care of St. Peter's Church. He was very much dedicated and hardworking in his hardworking. So they had no problem with Albert Edward Foreman, but still this new vicar, he wanted to discuss this matter. And now everything got revealed, like why Albert was called into the vestry. The matter was obviously related to him. And then Albert Edward Foreman was told that although he had been working there for great many years and nobody had any kind of complaint regarding his duties, because he had been able to fulfill the duties as a caretaker, as a verger, to the satisfaction of everybody's concern. Okay, so during this great many years, Albert had been able to discharge his duties in the most satisfying manner. So nobody had no offense regarding his work as a verger, regarding his duties as a verger. Okay, but according to the vicar, the most extraordinary circumstance was Albert's illiteracy. He neither could read nor he could write, and he had problem with that. Okay, so we can see that this person, he is a representative of the new generation. Okay, he was a representative of the generation where actually reading and writing is essentially important, and he thought that in a church like St. Peter's Neville Square, an illiterate verger should not be allowed, actually should not be allowed in such a reputable church. Such a verger should not be kept. So therefore what happened, he asked Albert Edward Foreman to actually he wanted Albert Edward Foreman to think something about this matter, because it was obviously an extraordinary matter in his opinion. Okay, so in his opinion it was an extraordinary matter. Okay, and therefore what happened, Albert Edward Foreman, he was asked by the new vicar, he was told by the new vicar that his illiteracy was a matter of extraordinary circumstance, because this person, he was a person who was a representative of the of the educated generation, where education is essentially important, and he thought that if a verger of the church is illiterate, then he would not be able to discharge his duties in a appropriate manner or in a proper manner. So he asked Albert to think something about that matter. But when Albert was informed about his illiteracy, he was not at all embarrassed. There was no sign of embarrassment on his face, because he was a person who had a lot of worldly wisdom and experience. So he was not at all bothered about his illiteracy. So let us go to the next page now. The last vicar knew that, sir, he replied. He said it did not make no difference. He always said there was a great deal of too much education in the world for his taste. So Albert Edward Foreman briskly replied, okay, that the last vicar or the previous vicar had knowledge about Albert's illiteracy, and he had no problem with Albert's illiteracy. It did not make any difference, because Albert was discharging his duties as a caretaker of the church in a very efficient manner. So he had no problem with Albert's illiteracy, and he was not a person who thought that formal schooling or your college diploma or school diploma is the only criteria or is the only is the only education of the world. Okay, so besides formal schooling and your school diploma, there's a great deal of education in this world. Okay, so that is actually true, because we have always learned that from birth till death, from our cradle till our grave, we are acquiring education. We learn, that is education actually. So only formal schooling or your college diploma or degree, that is not only education. So the old vicar, who was an experienced person, he thought that Albert Edward Foreman, he was Albert Edward Foreman, he was not only going to like Albert Edward Foreman, he was not causing any kind of problem in the church. Okay, the previous vicar thought in that way, and he thought that apart from your formal schooling or school diploma or degree, there's a great deal of education in this world, because education does not only mean formal schooling or education. So Albert Edward Foreman's illiteracy was a matter of concern for the new vicar, because he thought that Albert Edward Foreman was illiterate, isn't it? So he was actually a representative of the educated generation, who considers or who thought that actually, or who believed in that conventional belief that education only means formal education, the literacy or the ability to read and write. But the old vicar, he had a completely different opinion about education. He thought that education is much more beyond formal schooling and literacy or the ability to read and write. He thought that apart from schools or colleges, we can acquire education from many other situations. So apart from your school situation, there are many other situations in our life which can make us educated. Okay, so education can be gained from every situation of our life. So the old vicar had no problem with Albert's illiteracy. He had no problem with Albert's illiteracy. Now, then it is continued. It's the most amazing thing. It's the most amazing thing I ever heard, cried the general. Do you mean to say that you have been verger of this church for 16 years and never learned to read or write? So when the general or the two church wardens and the vicar saw that Albert did not repent his illiteracy or did not regret the fact that he was unable to read or write, they told that it was the most amazing thing that he had been verger of the church for 16 years and he never tried to read or write. I went into service when I was 12, sir, so he started to work as a paceboy at the age of 12. The cook in the first place tried to teach me once, but I did not seem to have the knack for it. Knack means a special quality to learn. And then with one thing and another, I never seemed to have the time. I never really found a want of it. I think a lot of these young fellows waste a rare lot of time reading when they might be doing something useful. So Albert Edward Foreman, he did not have very good views on your education. Okay, so he was quite happy being illiterate. And when he was 12, he went into service, started as a paceboy, and the cook in the first house tried to teach him. But he thought that he did not have the ability to learn the alphabets because the alphabets did not get into his head so easily. And then he got busy in one thing or another. He became first footman, then he became a fourth footman, then he became first footman, then he became a single-handed butler. So Albert thought that he did not get the time to actually educate himself. Okay, and he did not have neither he had time nor he had the quality to learn, nor he had the talent to learn the alphabet. So he could not educate himself or could not learn to read or write. But don't you want to know the news? Said the other church warden. Don't you ever want to write a letter? No, my lord, I seem to manage very well without. And of late years now, they all have these pictures in the papers. I got to know what's going on pretty well. Me, wife, quite a scholar, and if I want to write a letter, she writes it for me. It's not as if I was a betting man. The two church warden gave the vicar a troubled glance and then looked down at the table. So, Albert Edward Foreman, when he was asked whether he did not want to write a letter or read the news, he told that in the newspapers they used to post those pictures. Okay, so along with the headline and the story, they have pictures in the newspapers. So he could understand what is going on in the world or what kind of news is going on. He can know that by looking at the pictures in the papers. And regarding writing letters, his wife used to write letters for him because she was a educated woman. She knew how to read and write. So she used to write letters for him. And he said that he did not want to take risks. That's why his wife used to write letters. And the two church warden, they gave the vicar trouble glance because they knew that now the vicar was going to take a tough decision regarding the illiteracy of the verger. Well, Foreman, I have talked the matter over with this gentleman and they quite agree with me that the situation is impossible. At a church like St. Peter's, Nepal Square, we cannot have a verger who can neither read nor write. Edward's thin, sallow face reddened and he moved uneasily, but he made no reply. So Albert became very uneasy because now the vicar, he was already very, very resolute. There was an expression of resolute benignity on his face. Now he was going to, he already told the verger that they could not afford an illiterate verger in a church like St. Peter's, Nepal Square, and therefore Albert became impatient now. Understand me, foreman. I have no complaint to make against you. You do your work quite satisfactorily. I have the highest opinion both of your character and of your capacity, but we haven't the right to take the risk of some accident that might happen owing to your lamentable ignorance. It's a matter of prudence as well as of principle. So this person, I told you that he was a representative of the educated generation who only considered that education is restricted to formal schooling or college diploma or school degrees, but education is far beyond that, okay, which the old Verger always used to say. Now Albert Edward Foreman was told that they could not take any risk of some scandal or some accident that might occur due to the illiteracy or the ignorance of the Verger. So it was a matter of prudence, it was a matter of principle that they could not keep a illiterate Verger in the church. But could not you learn, Foreman asked. The general, the wardens, they did not want to be strict with Albert. So they wanted to offer Albert a chance because he had been working there for 16 years, his work was satisfactory. So they wanted to give him a chance. No sir, I am afraid I could not now. You see, I am not as young I was, and if I could not seem able to get the letters in me head when I was a nipper, I don't think there's much like Albert told that he could not educate himself now because if as he was not able to get the letters into his head when he was a nipper, when he was young, then he did not have the chance of learning the alphabets now. We don't want to be harsh with you, Foreman, said the vicar, but the church wardens and I have quite made up our minds. We will give you 3 months, and if at the end of that time you can't read or write, I'm afraid you will have to go. So Albert was told directly that if he could not learn to read and write, then they had to fire him from the church. Okay, so they had to discharge him of his duties actually. Sorry, they had to free him of his duties. Albert Edward had never liked the new vicar. He said from the beginning they had made a mistake when they gave him St. Peter's. He wasn't the type of man they wanted with a classic congregation like that. And now he straightened himself a little. He knew his value and he wasn't going to allow him to put upon. I'm very sorry, sir. I'm afraid it's not. I'm too old a dog to learn new tricks. I have lived a good many years without knowing how to and without wishing to praise myself. So in the next class, we are going to learn the next part of the story. So here Albert, he was very much angry with the new vicar. He did not like the new vicar from the very beginning because he said that they made a mistake by appointing this man because he wasn't a type of man who could adjust himself with a classy people like the parishioners of St. Peter's Neville Square. Okay, so he being a person from the East End of England, he was not a person who would easily adjust with the ways of the fashionable parishioners of St. Peter's Neville Square. Now Albert was very angry, and he told them directly that he was not going to educate himself because he was too old a dog, just like a old dog who could not be taught new tricks. Similarly, Albert thought that he was too old to learn reading and writing, and therefore we will proceed with the next part of the story in the next video. So thank you all of you. Hope you liked this video, and if you liked it, then continue to shower love on me by liking, sharing and subscribing to my channel.